Hey everybody, Chris here. A lot of you have been giving us a lot of questions about Heroic Role, and we wanted to go ahead and put together a quick Q&A video to address some of them. Just a quick reminder, our Kickstarter is live. Also, if you have any future questions for us or just want to interact with us in general, we love talking to other gamers. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Heroic Role. Also, you can follow us on Facebook at Heroic Space Roll. Just do a search for Heroic Role and you'll find us. Please engage us, and we really appreciate it. Also, we do have a Discord channel. You can get the link for that Discord via our website or the Kickstarter post, and just talk to us. We appreciate any feedback and hope to hang out with you soon.
Yeah.
No, my answer would be we got super frustrated using different platforms during COVID. I got to try, I won't say which ones, but I tried at least 5 different ones, and each one's kind of had the same problem over and over again. They were slow, janky, user interface was really difficult to figure out. As a player, it was less confusing, but as somebody trying to run a game, it was just trying to put together maps and setting up character tokens and keeping everything organized, and then having the tabletop platform go down in the middle of game and all that kind of stuff happening all the time is just very, very frustrating.
Yeah. So I guess you could look at it in 2 ways. Is it why Heroic Roll the name? Because then there's a different answer for that. And then why Heroic Roll, like the platform?
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the reason that we created something this, or trying to create something like this, is that I kept seeing things that I could fix, or that I knew I had fixed in the past on other things, and I was just like, I can fix this, and then I couldn't. Like I kept seeing some stub toes and some minor errors that are just like, this would be really nice if it did this, and just the number of this would be really nice if it did X had gotten to the point where I was just like, I just needed to be something better. So yeah, that's why I went for it. I think it felt like this was something I could actually contribute very positively to the world with, and that would be like, oh, this is gonna hopefully be significantly better than the other stuff I had access to. So
Yeah, for sure. Like for me, I was hoping that just by the first virtual tabletop platform I used, I went to buy a module because I felt super intimidated by figuring out how to upload maps and figuring out the lighting settings and all that kind of stuff. And I figured by buying a module, it would help cut down the difficulty of adopting the platform. And it really didn't help. It was still very complex to use. I remember running a game for y'all and trying to just get you to see a certain map, and I couldn't figure out how to do it because I did something really weird, and it took me a lot of trial and error just to efficiently run a game.
yeah, I remember watching a YouTube video trying to help you figure out what was going wrong. It was like literally a YouTube video how to do this because it was so complicated or because it was so unintuitive or something, and just a little frustrating. I mean, there's no way you can guarantee that something's going to be intuitive for everyone, obviously, but you can smooth off enough rough edges that these questions are like really kind of in the minor number of it. Like, to answer the question about why we picked Heroic Roll the name, though, it was ultimately just like a brainstorming session, I think. And I think Jess, my wife, came up with it and was just like, oh, this seems really awesome. So
Yeah, that's true. We didn't even come up with a name. Somebody else did.
yeah, I think it was just kind of serendipity, honestly. It was just like everybody has the word roll in there somewhere, and I guess it just kind of rolled out. I'm not meant to say that anyway. Yeah, it kind of happened the way it happened. So yeah.
Yeah, I think also one of the key features we want to do is chain together maps so that you can move things from one map to the next, and literally creating a mini video game almost, where you have levels, you go through level, and players can kind of do stuff on their own. One of my best friends that I've been playing role-playing games with since college, she was telling me that her group, they don't even communicate over video or voice chat. They actually literally just chat. And the biggest disruptor for her was when they get to the end of the map or the dungeon, the DM would have to chat and wait for everybody to get to a certain point. Then he would move them en masse, even though each individual character wouldn't necessarily be there. So that's, I thought that's kind of interesting. And when I did more research, it turns out a lot of people play tabletop games that way online. I mean, my very first role playing game wasn't a in person roll dice tabletop game. I was an IRC back in the '90s, and we were like chatting to each other, pretending to be a character. It was just one big chat game, and I know a lot of people played role playing games that way and still do. So I thought that would be a really cool feature to add and include.
Oh yeah, and I love I think as a concept, the ability to create this kind of interconnected world. It's like it actually makes it feel more immersive. Like enemies that run away to another map are literally in that next map, or if your character moves to the next map, it's not a copy of your character. You don't get beamed back to the other map by the DM, and then there's like 2 tokens that you have control of on the map or something briefly. Like it's more, it's a more immersive experience, really. And I already said that, but it's really cool. Like you end up having these characters that feel like they're alive, and then they feel like they're dead because they're singletons. There's only one of them in the world. They're literally there and up. And even down to, like, even though you can generate monsters at will as a DM, each monster is its own entity and exists and has a little life cycle. It can live and die and go to another map if it wants to, or go interact with the players of the environment. And it just feels like these things are real, that they have life to them. So I feel like that's a big benefit on top of all the other bells and whistles. And at the end of the day, I feel like that's the biggest contribution we have to this thing. So yeah, like to me, because we talked about a bunch of numbers when we came up with this this amount thing, and I just thinking out loud, it's just like, as a developer, I see how much it costs to run a website. Like
Yeah.
not even accounting for salaries, but like the actual technical costs of you have X amount of data on AWS or something, and it costs you a certain amount a month just to host static files. And if you have dynamic processing and stuff like that, or you have database storage, like we're probably going to have distributed. I mean, we are going to have distributed database storage. It's not cheap. And having an always on, always active application that people can use anywhere in the world, basically, with minor latency, that is a corporate level business feature that a lot of people are not ready to deliver, and it does cost money. So being able to do that, and having the funds to do that without having to go to an investor and possibly compromise the vision of our product is a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a background in web hosting myself. I'm actually a co-founder of one and CEO of another, and I can tell you infrastructure costs are a real thing. I was part of a project where we underestimated cost of infrastructure, and it was extremely painful. It caused us to cheap out on infrastructure, and that led to people who signed up for a service, they had really shitty service because we didn't have the best infrastructure. I wonder if that's a good reason why a lot of these other solutions for tabletop games kind of run so poorly. It's because a lot of them are hobby projects, and they haven't put enough firepower beneath their platform to be able to run it as efficiently with the amount of people they have using it.
Yeah, and I know anybody that has had any success with a hobby project realizes how fast they get in over their head, how they start feeling like, oh man, I can't maintain this by myself. And if it's not something that's generating revenue anyway, like you're just out of your league. Sometimes you just step back. Like it can be a really big issue where like you'll get orphaned open source projects and stuff like that all over the place, or just orphaned hobby projects that like this small group of fans will be working on, or a small group of fans will be using, and they'll be really excited about, and they won't get content anymore because the creator is just like, I needed to get a job that paid money, and then they have a problem. So like I feel like that's a big part of the number too, is just like having enough runway to get to revenue generating, or at least partially to revenue generating, that you can go from there and kind of be self-sustaining. And it's just like, I suppose we could have asked for a smaller number and hoped we got overfunded, but I want more certainty before I start upending my career and stuff like that for this. And I think you do too, obviously. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and also the other thing is that we want to invest back into the tabletop role playing community.
Oh yeah.
Our logo was designed by a really really badass guy who, like, I love our logo. I love all that stuff, the aesthetic of it. But we want to keep paying artists and contributors to like create a really beautiful looking platform and have a lot of really amazing assets. And we're not gonna go to Reddit and rip off a bunch of people's work. We're gonna pay them and have them create work, and that costs money too.
we want to signal boost people like they're out there doing this stuff, because there's so many just mind-blowingly good Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop game artists and just general artists that can contribute to this type of platform that are so fragmented and out there. Like, people will get on the Roll20 marketplace, for example, and you'll see a little fraction of the artists that can get on and do that kind of thing. A lot of people
Hmm.
have their own Patreons and have their own stuff, and just having a platform that's low barrier to entry for those people, where they can distribute like really cool content and like get this kind of, not, I'm not saying everyone will use the platform, but like has one source of truth type thing where everybody can go to this place and just say, here's a bunch of artists that are doing work for this. You can just buy the art and use it, or you can use it in the game or whatever, just as a marketplace on its own. That would be really cool, and it's gonna be really cool, I think. Just as like, I really am excited about that, because we could really add a lot to the like just the tabletop gaming community in general that way.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool. So that's why I hit 1,000.
Yeah.
And that's a guesstimate. I It's probably on the lower end of what is probably going to cost us, to be honest with y'all. So going over that amount would be nice.
You need
but
health insurance and stuff too, so yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's I yeah, it almost feels like I don't think we can really realistically ask for more and hope to get it. Like, I feel like this is the lowest number that we could be like sure that, like, yeah, this is going to be, it's enough to do what we need to do, and
Yeah.
it still be kind of a tight belt situation. So
Yeah. Eating a lot of bologna.
bologna and ramen.
Hmm.
Oh man, just basically we have the ability to produce like lighting layers. Like, as a map maker or a dungeon master, you can set up areas that have their own intrinsic lighting. So instead of having dynamic lighting on or off, you have, this area is lit, this area is not lit, this area has like background light. If your character doesn't have special vision or doesn't have a light source, they can have a dynamic, not necessarily, not even dynamically lit necessarily, it can be dynamically lit, but like an area that has a light map on it, that you can walk your character through and have areas that are illuminated and areas that are dark. You have alpha layers, so there's different levels of luminosity. You can have transparent objects over your characters. You have, we have layered maps. That's really cool. The ability to chain your maps together, which we've already talked about, super duper really cool for a dungeon master. That eliminates so much strain and amount of time you have to do, and like the thing that web applications are designed to do is simplify the experience of something, and just like, you're automating the part where you would move all of your tokens physically over to another map, or erase it and redraw it. Like that type of experience is really nice, and it's all the features that you want, like parity with other virtual tabletop platforms anyway. It's just like, you have a map, you drop your tokens on, you do your experience with it, but we can smooth off some of the rough edges and make things like adding monsters a lot easier, have automatic generation of like monster tokens and stuff like that, or a name that is attached to a monster, and they have a persistent entity that follows them around wherever you use them. If your players ask the name of a random goblin and it generates the name for the goblin, and that goblin isn't dead, they might run into him later and they might recognize him. He'll be there. You don't have to go through and do the work of that goblin, recreating the goblin, did you write it down, did you not write it down type situation. Like that persistent entity level means a lot less work for dungeon masters and a lot more control.
Yeah, I have to say the being able to add like weather effects on top of your map as a dungeon master is super cool, because I always want to like try to subtly remind my players, hey, by the way, it's like a blizzard, it's snowing outside, and you shouldn't be like doing stuff where like as if you're on the beach, in a tropical paradise. So having like that animation effect helps reinforce it. It helps create some immersion, which I really love.
Yeah, and like you could say it's a dark and stormy night, but it's not actually a dark and stormy night. It's
Yeah.
a bright day in the middle of a town, and you're just like, you use your imagination, and people do the theater of the mind is how a lot of this works. But if you can push them along a little bit, you can get some creative vision out a little better too, and maybe keep things a little more interesting.
Yeah, totally. I I had a couple friends ask this question because a lot of them have vision issues and they have a really tough time with virtual tabletop platforms. Some of them are colorblind. The person who taught me D&D that I played with for a very long time, he had degenerative vision issues. When I met him, he could read books, he could drive. Now he can't, and try playing online with them, but it's just not something that is workable for him because the magnification apps that he uses on his phones and tablets and computers doesn't work that well across the board. And for me, I'm really hoping that Heroic Roll is something that can be a little bit more accessible friendly than what's currently out there. It's a very tricky thing to do from a product management perspective, but I think it's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these aren't solved problems, obviously, because vision loss isn't a solved problem. But uh, we can obviously do things to shifting colors for colorblind people, or just using patterns or text descriptions of things instead of relying on symbols or colors to delineate information. Just having the
I know.
ability to zoom as much as you want really is very helpful. Having all the menus be scalable as well, which is like a core feature that we're putting in here, is really important. um and yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that, and it just, you can really get a much larger screen experience and stuff like that. I mean, we've talked in the past about coming up with a way to interact with screen readers and stuff as well. I'm not
Mhm.
sure actually what the feasibility of that is, but we're obviously researching that to see if we can actually do that. Because a lot of the web experiences with screen readers are not great. Like, you have ARIA labels and you have tabs and stuff, but like there's severe limitations behind that. So seeing how we can interact with screen readers and how we can deal with that type of thing is super important. So it may be a completely alternate version of the site or something. I mean, how many people have a cell phone versus a gaming computer?
Mhm.
Or you can play games on a virtual tabletop on your laptop, sure. But like, if you want your friends to play Dungeons and Dragons with you, and maybe they've never played it before, uh, having them get a laptop out is a pretty high bar to entry, when you could just send them a link and they could pull it up on their phone. I mean, you have everything on a phone you need to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons if you can interact with your token. You could literally call someone and have the audio for your game, and click around on the screen. I mean, like you're playing a phone game. Like, just there's not a it's a much lower bar to entry to for a lot of people that would not normally be able to get into the game. And plus, have you ever missed a session because you were out of town or on vacation or something, and you really
Mhm.
wanted to play but you just had your phone with you? Like, if we've tried before, we've used like some of the other mobile apps and stuff, and I've tried personally to load several virtual tabletops on my phone and run them there, and it's not a great experience. I'm going to tell you, there's style issues, there's weird panning issues. Like, you can get your token moved around, or it'll be like way zoomed out, or some of the menu items you can't select. It's clearly not designed for that. By operating from mobile as the first thing we are developing, the mobile platform being the main platform, with the desktop platform being there too, but just being part of the customization, like, I think you can get a much better experience overall. Like, I'm not saying we're going to be deficient in the desktop platform at all. It's going to be great. The entire user interface is designed to be customizable. You make it look how you want it to look, and we have a number of default layouts that you can use. But like, having mobile be an actual thing that we're focusing on when a lot of people aren't, I think is a huge advantage.
Yeah, the other night I had a in-person game, and the mod I was using a Candlekeep mystery module for the game, and it had this really spectacular map for like the final boss battle sequence or whatever. But the map was super complicated, and I am not an artist. I can't draw worth a shit. That's just the way it is. And everybody around my table already had their phones out because they were using D&D Beyond for their character sheet stuff and their roller on their phones, everything like that. And I was just like, well, hell, man, if I just had Heroic Roll finished, they could just switch over to Heroic Roll and be like, here's the map, here's the character tokens. Don't get me wrong, I love miniatures. I used to have a huge Dungeon Forge set, but even with that type of a thing, those types of miniatures is a huge financial investment, and then you have to have like space in your house to store all that stuff. I live in an apartment, so not very feasible. I know my favorite YouTube videos are watching people putting together these like very elaborate battlescapes where they can have their entire D&D group go through it and all that kind of stuff. But for some reason, in my games, I usually have parties that like to circumvent the common path, and I would be a little upset if I'd spent all this money on a miniature setup with a great map and all that kind of stuff, and the players just go, "Oh, we're going to turn left."
And that's like partially also a good point. Like, we don't want like I love miniatures too. I think they're really cool. I think they really add something when you're playing in person. But having something that you could play in person or play online, and it's not necessarily the same experience, but similar enough that you feel like it's still the same game. Like having that experience as an option is great. Like people, the interaction with your phone is oftentimes a lot easier than doing pen and paper. I mean, we fully support people rolling their real dice and stuff, for example, no problem. But actually interacting with the miniatures and stuff like that is really nice. So I
Yeah.
lost the train there. I'm sorry.
That was cool.
Dog started barking, threw me off.
I love dogs. Dogs.
I do too. Dogs.
I think we already showed that off.
Yeah. I mean, so the full clarity, the maps that were in the demo video were static maps that we had augmented with weather effects. We added animation to maps that did not have it previously. We do support animated maps, and as well as animated characters. There we can load, character sprite sheets in PNGs or JPEGs or what have you, and you get that set up. You'll be able to do that as part of the user interface and the player interface. But like animated maps as videos or whatever, we can totally do that. There are some accessibility issues on mobile for some of that. Some browser features do not transfer over. So leaning a little more into some of the built-in features like the weather effects, or like using the layers thing to load animated sprites and stuff on top of the map to make the animations appear on your own, may be better. But if everybody is like, if everybody wants to peak performance of everything, you can totally play giant videos in the background and have all your characters be animated graphics the entire time, and however you want it to roll. Yeah, and like obviously when we do feature voting and stuff like that, we can do more elaborate character sprites and stuff, and like allow people to have directionality and stuff added to their sprites, or like movement based stuff like that. That's really a decision there. But out of the box, supporting animated just about everything you can think of, to the point that your device that you're interacting with the platform will allow you to handle it. We obviously will have fallback stuff. So if your device doesn't support animator, it's not going to be powerful enough to run an animated background. It'll fall back to a static background as long as it's set by the DM, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the configurability is really high, and if your device is going to be able to support it, or has the horsepower to run these complicated animated backgrounds, and we will optimize them so they'll run as good as they can. But if your device can do that, you are able to do it. So
Oh, I'm so excited.
We're just trying to lower the angle of the learning curve, move the slope down a bit. Dungeons and Dragons is its own level of complexity to get started with and to learn. And there are a number of resources out there to help you learn Dungeons and Dragons, but we want it to be as intuitive as playing on a tabletop, moving a token around and playing with dice. I mean, you got your rule book, you got your character sheet, and you can play basically. People know how to move tokens around with their touch screens and stuff like that, or on their desktops if they want. And really, we just want to prompt people and let them know what's going on visually, in addition to what the dungeon master is telling them. So if you do an ability check or something, it's going to pop up on your screen and say, "Hey, do an ability check for dexterity or whatever. Here's the save," or if you know the save, go ahead and roll it. And then you roll your dice and type in the number, or you click the button to roll for you using our actual randomized dice system. You can either is fine. I'm not here to tell you that our system is going to be better than your dice, because everybody likes their dice. If you are a dice master and you can roll 20s every time, please do. That sounds awesome. Hopefully the dungeon master doesn't think you're cheating. Yeah, just go nuts with that. But like, we're trying to make it as simple as possible, so you don't have to learn something on top of Dungeons and Dragons to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and it should be noted, Heroic Roll is going to support Dungeons and Dragons at first, but we're definitely in a long-term roadmap. We do want to be able to support as many different game systems as possible. I'm a huge D10 system fan. I played a lot of World of Darkness games. I played also Exalted. I played Pathfinder. One of my other favorite systems is Savage Worlds, which uses all the dice. So we definitely do want to make it dynamic in the long term. Short term, we're going to focus on D&D because that's our favorite, and that's probably also the most popular role-playing game. I think for easy, there are two main filters. One, me, I'm a giant dumbass when it comes to software, and if I can figure it out, then it's easy. But also, this is one of the key reasons why we want to build a community, not just have a Kickstarter project. We plan to do a ton of customer dev work. We want to get feedback from people on what challenges they're feeling when they try to use virtual tabletop, and we really want to accommodate as many different perspectives as possible. And that actually helps make better software choices, which leads to making it more accessible and easier to use.
Yeah, and we're obviously not going to be the only people using the software, and I may think something works great because I'm used to clicking 20 different things, but I'm also a developer, and we have a history of making user unfriendly applications that just do things. So
Yeah,
we're trying to go against that.
if Matt wanted to make a command prompt system for virtual tabletop, he would. Yeah.
If we want heroic roll CLI, I can churn that out too, probably. But it ultimately, I think it's probably going to be better with a nice user interface that we've had some, really good designers come through and do some passes at and get a really usable, modern kind of good feeling application to run with that we maintain and update the interface of and make sure that, fix bugs in a timely fashion and things like that. So
awesome. Well, Matt, that's all the questions we got for this week, at least.
that is awesome.
Thank you all so much for watching, and talk to you later.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye.